932. All right. Hey, we're going to jump into technical SEO. We're talking to Jody O'Donnell. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're more than welcome. As a SEO technical director, Jody, you're over at Merkle, and you're overseeing all the technical SEO strategy and effectively scaling large SEO campaigns. That's a pretty impressive bit of responsibility to carry. Tell us about your regular day.
So for the most part, we deal with a lot of clients. My team, their number one job is to work with our account teams and our clients. A lot of times we're the bridge between marketing and the development teams for implementing the different recommendations that we give them. Secondly, we definitely look at scalable tools that allow our production floor to more efficiently, gather data. We really want them concentrating their time on sifting and and coming up with really good analytics pieces. And you can see some of those tools that we kind of create. We do public-facing ones on SEO, technicalseo.com. If you go there, we have a whole bunch of tools that we kind of put together. We take all of those tools that you can kind of see there, and we create scalable versions in the backgrounds for all of them.
Oh, very cool, very cool. So you're rolling out you're doing a little bit of community gift, so to speak, inside of the SEO realm. You're again giving back and giving us some good tools to be able to utilize. Meanwhile, you're customizing and developing your stuff. So you've actually moved away from the utilization of SaaS environment, building your own software to fit your needs. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, especially when we don't have a market. So we're not interested in competing in the marketplace. So when we see needs that don't exist, and let me give you a perfect example, and that kind of fits in with what we're talking about here. When I look at the crawlers that exist on the market, Screaming Frog, Deep Crawl, OnCrawl, Botify, the one thing that's missing from all of them is none of them render and dump the DOM, right? So in the marketplace, there doesn't exist this ability to read the web page as Google is reading them currently.
Right.
So we built that in the background. So our crawler has that. So the stuff that we've created, we as soon as we see something that's better in the marketplace than what we have, we actually take the tools off because we just don't want something out there that is competing openly. We're not interested in that. We'd rather buy that service. But we often come up with the prototypes before the market has a solution.
Really? Oh, that's amazing. Well, I certainly want to hear more of your kind of internal scrum of software development, because honestly, being in SEO as long as we have been, there's certainly an entire marketplace for tools that fit almost the bill, but you still have to keep on finding some additional things because not one tool does it. And I mean, you're preaching to the choir here, but you've actually taken it to the degree that it really should happen is evolve your own stuff. If the marketplace doesn't have it, put it all together. So I mean, how long have you guys been developing your own analysis tools?
So the Scalpel product, which is the crawler, we've actually been working on ever since I came on with Audit Media about 5.5 years ago. So it was already in development. It was kind of a much smaller program than what it is now. It's just a Microsoft executable off the desktop. Couldn't run custom, queries and that sort of stuff through the database. So we kind of extracted it as an executable, put the whole thing as a server online, as a service, and then we created the database and everything in the background so that we could make our own custom queries based upon what we've already extracted from the client's website.
Now that's sexy SEO. I'm just saying. For those of you that don't understand what he just said, he just whispered in my ear some beauty.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad I got that. It's not even early yet.
You gave me chills there. All right. Well, hey, let me ask you. You're also a speaker at events, and you were recently at SMX Advanced. Tell us about your experience there.
I've been to SMX Advanced a couple times before just as a participant, and I'd always enjoyed how technically advanced obviously it is. It's one of the better events that I've been to. I was really happy to be able to speak and that sort of stuff. This last time was actually my first time speaking at any event. So they make it very comfortable. They're very nice, and I really enjoyed the experience. The audience was extremely receptive, and we got some really good feedback. So I really enjoyed myself.
You're literally giving him applause.
I gave applause.
Wow. So, all right, Doug. We're just going to take your toys away from you. All right. Well, you gave a presentation here just recently over SMX, and that was the presentation, What to Do when Google Can't Understand Your JavaScript. Can you take some of our listeners that are less savvy about the needs for JavaScript inside of SEO, or more importantly, what components JavaScript make up of, and what the value is of optimizing JavaScript? Can you give us kind of take us in for a landing here on some of the key components that SEO professionals should know about, let alone just the average marketer understanding the weight that this has in the SEO scoring? Can you give us an introduction there?
Sure. So, if we think about JavaScript prior to about 2 years ago, before Google was able to execute and render the DOM and be able to interpret it, our stuff, everything with SEOs with JavaScript was, you don't want it in HTML source, right? All the JavaScript needed to be removed. If you're looking at an Ahref, that you needed to avoid having that as, as an on-click or any type of JavaScript function, you needed a URL there. I mean, that was always the way we looked at stuff. If you were doing an AJAX call in the background, you knew that none of that content that you're calling is going to get scored and indexed to get to that page.
Right.
We just had certain axioms with JavaScript that we had to follow, or else, we kind of led our clients down the wrong path. Then, we kind of came around with hashbang. Hashbang was a little bit of a diversion. And not so much that it was a bad thing. We were just all of a sudden switching from server-side app to client-side app rendering, and hashbang was kind of a nice transition point for that. But what that really allowed us to do was to create HTML snapshots. So this was our real introduction. HTML snapshot is where you'd use a service like pre-render.io. You'd give them the web page. It would grab all the instruction set, grab all the file assets such as JavaScript files, CSS files, execute the onload, and create the DOM. And then pre-render.io would then dump the DOM as an HTML file and then serve that to the search engine so they were seeing the right thing. This is really how JavaScript has evolved in SEO. The biggest next step, obviously, was Google being able to read and interpret the DOM. They came out with that, by the way, in about 2008, but didn't really perfect it until about 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And there's still issues there, right? It's not 100%. But if I were to give you the one page or couple line synopsis of the entire presentation, is that you now need, as an SEO, you need to be not only looking at the HTTP headers, the HTML source, or the HTML snapshot if you're Bing.
Right.
And now with Google, you actually have to be looking at the DOM. So you have a third place to look. We call this the third order of precedence, the first being headers, the second the HTML source, and now the DOM is a third order that comes. So as SEOs, we really need to be aware of what that is. The walkaway is you need to be able to look at the DOM like we used to look at the HTML source.
Right.
The same things we're looking for in the source, we now want to see in the DOM. We don't want to see JavaScript functions for navigation. We don't want to see any of the traditional things that were problems in HTML source represented in the DOM. So now we're just talking about consistency, making sure that the index or the content and the SEO signals are lined up between those three orders, and just knowing that you need to even go look in this next place, I think was a bit of a revelation for a lot of the people that were there.
Understood. Now, I mean, you went deep diving on these concepts. Well, I mean, from the layperson you did, but what we're dealing with is how the site actually renders, how the page actually renders, and the timing of it. There's so much functionality that was not available up until now. Now Google's processing this, is understanding it. Have you seen over the last 2 years substantial scoring opportunity with the rendered DOM content that wasn't available in years past?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only do we see it in the idea of seeing the content being indexed properly and as whether it's scored properly, that's a little bit more subjective because that's more on the Google side.
Yeah.
But as long as you're being able to represent it through the crawl and the content's there within the DOM, we have been seeing that. And where you see it is a lot of times you'll look at the HTML source, and I'm going to pick on Angular a little bit, Angular JavaScript. They have a specific way of doing data binding where you can see the Angular JavaScript code a little bit in the HTML source.
Oh, wow.
And when you go and look at Google, like in the SERPs, you see that the title tag's actually the title tag, not the snippet of code, that the meta description, the actual meta description that's in the DOM, not that's in the code in the HTML source. So we've absolutely seen that through several different sites. And we've also seen real indexation problems. So when you have a site that works well with Angular and that sort of stuff, the pages will get indexed properly. And I used to have this example it was actually a Google video page where it was properly indexed by Google because it was able to read the DOM, and Bing could see nothing of it.
Really?
And side by side, you could see the starkness of the website and how it was represented between the two search engines.
Well, then let's open up that a little bit regarding Bing. Bing's been trying desperately to carve more market space or market share out of search. And, I mean, wouldn't you agree that they're trying to make large jumps in getting back into the game?
Yeah, it's the little search engine that tries. And they do. You know, I will say that, you know, unfortunately, Bing's in an unenviable position of always having to play catch-up, which is always a difficult spot to be in. I do know that they are trying, and one of the things that we tested was, and something that kind of came up when we were doing this examination, is that we got really curious if Google had a cutoff in their snapshot. Mm-hmm. So obviously, you know, what most people think of when they think of the DOM gets rendered, and you immediately, Google would take that snapshot and go with it. And we were kind of curious, thinking, you know, I wonder if they wait a little bit before taking that snapshot. Maybe trying to catch people injecting content after the DOM render that may not get picked up, right? Mm-hmm. So we tested this. And we basically, I'm going to get back to Bing in just a second on this. Yeah. But we went and tested this, and what we knew from Google is that they take physical snapshots, right? With the fetch and render, right. They take a physical snapshot of the page. Through the mobile API, they take a physical snapshot and show you the image. And through the mobile friendliness tool, we've noticed the same thing. So we created this page. Max Prin, who's on my team, created this page where as soon as the DOM renders, a black screen comes up and a timer ticker starts, right? It's just a JavaScript timer ticker. And we figured if they're waiting, then that wait time would be reflected in their snapshots, and that's exactly what we saw.
How long was
the wait?
So
we were seeing fetch and render showing 5.0 seconds.
Oh, post DOM rendering.
Exactly.
Wow.
So we ran it through the other ones, and they all showed the exact same thing. And interestingly, when we tested Bing, they showed a 6-second time. So they are playing with it.
They're already anticipating the bait and switch, or they're already anticipating the additional manipulation on content, and they're holding back to be able to see the full picture. That's interesting.
Yeah, and we have that page is live, and you can go and look at. You can actually go and look at the fetch and render for that live page, and actually still see it says 5.0 seconds.
Have you been doing continued testings? Because the question is this now a whack-a-mole game that the SEOs, and we're not really talking black hat, we're talking a little bit of gray area here, that they adjust their time to render their new content past the 5-second mark. See what I'm saying?
Absolutely. No, I think that you still have. So, I mean, if you want to get into the gray hat, black hat, there's the possibilities are all still there with the DOM. You just have to start thinking about it more in a post-render situation. Personally, we've never been interested in trying to reverse the algorithm. We look at SEO through a series of signals, and then we interpret those signals, and then we see how Google interprets those signals through the SERP. And we can do the same thing with Bing and the other search engines as well.
So you're anticipating Bing coming through, but you were mentioning that they're still not in the game of actually doing a post DOM rendering.
That's correct. No, they're not doing that right now. They still require HTML snapshots, just like we've been doing before.
Well, excellent. Well, I mean, these are some advanced techniques, obviously. I mean, the first thing out of the gate, and I don't mean to be rudimentary, is you've got to know your HTML. You've got to know your header information. You've got to know what signals you're already sending, which are kind of the major substance of the SEO processing. But at the same time, taking advantage of everything that you can render with jQuery and JavaScript to be able to get that content in there. I mean, at the same time, you also have to be very careful that you don't have inside of that rendered content, spammy content that can actually get you into trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there were people who were throwing stuff into the DOM, and we saw. I'm not going to mention the client, but we saw this happening with client where you would look in the HTML source and you'd see the word free. I think it was something like 13 or 15 times on the page, but when you looked in the DOM, it was close to 300. Right, and that was all in the anchor text. So, I mean, this was being done, I want to say I was with this client probably 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they were doing it back then. The problem is now is all that's discoverable by Google now.
And you just wonder if those that package that up are actually paying attention. They've got to be paying attention and knowing that the game's afoot. I mean, Google's onto them, and Google's getting smarter and smarter. I mean, the evolution of Google here in the last 3 years of getting smart rendering and understanding, and on top of that, even prodding everybody into the AMP space. I mean, they are absolutely gearing up for no nonsense anymore. The days of spamming and injecting are over. They're on to you, and you hope that plenty get caught under the wheels. Because it doesn't. It turns SEO on its head again and again and again. That the true optimization professionals don't do that. They know not to do that, but it's going to be out there anyway. So it's interesting to see that purge out of the system. What you did, one of the discrepancies that you did mention in your presentation was that the rendering tests completely ignore the no follow tags on links.
So this was a bit of a corner case, and what we were trying to show with the problem was an order of precedence issue, not necessarily that the no follow is not followed in the DOM, because that's not necessarily true. So let me set up the situation.
Sure.
And so the situation was we did a test where we had a tag with a href and a URL within the HTML source, and then in the DOM after render we actually would change that exact href and put a rel no follow microformat annotation within the a tag.
Yes.
And what we think was that because you had a conflict in signal, right, between the HTML source and the DOM,
right,
that when Google goes through and figures out its crawl queue based upon the links that it finds on your page, we also know as SEOs that it only takes the first link to a page, and any duplicates it kind of just throws out, right? Mm-hmm. What we think is this was a deduping mechanism problem, where it went through and it saw the href, right, and it picked it up and threw it into a crawl queue, didn't see the rel no follow. When it goes to the DOM, we think that it just looked at the URL and the href and saw that was a matching pair and just, nope, we don't, this is a dupe.
Yeah.
And never examined the actual A tag itself.
So it wasn't a selective processing, no, we're not going to do it. It's just that I'm seeing two different versions. I'll pick the latest one, basically.
Right. Well, actually, it didn't. It picked the one prior because of the deduping mechanism.
Gotcha.
Piece. Yeah. So then, and on top of that, we shortly after we published the article for some testing. We can get into that later if you'd like. We got to go on to an on-air, Angular on-air with John Mueller, and we directly asked him. So if you have conflicting signals, between the headers, the HTML source, and the DOM, which one kind of trumps? And then if you have conflicting content between the HTML source and the DOM, like which one do you pick? And so obviously John Mueller is very good at advice. He said, well, you shouldn't have conflict between, your orders of precedence. That's great advice.
Answer without an
but
answer.
It's not necessarily always real world.
Yeah, exactly.
So he basically said they will pick up an SEO signal the first time they see it, and they won't unsee it if they didn't see it subsequently. So if you have a no index tag in the HTTP header and nothing in the source of the DOM, it's still going to be no indexed. It's not going to unsee it because it wasn't mentioned in the next two orders of precedence, which I found interesting. The content, he said, was a little bit more of a mixed bag, though. he said that they will choose which content that they want, which kind of goes in line with how they deal with certs, right?
Yep.
If you do a query and they think that there's an H1 that suits it better, or there is something else on the page that suits it, they'll change the SERP and not use your meta description.
Correct.
I think that's kind of like this, kind of along the same lines.
So there's a level of prioritization that it's imposing on any type of rendering, and that makes perfect sense. And that's what we've been seeing in SERPs for a very long time. I mean, we never held on to meta descriptions being valid. I mean, for the last 5 years, it's been like I said, a mixed bag of nuts of what to expect. Now you're demonstrating a much more scientific perspective on the order of precedence and what it's actually valuing. But you can also, as you're breaking this down, you can also, I wouldn't say, I'm not suggesting trick the environment, but actually move your content in a particular precedence order to be able to try to affect that as best as possible. Correct?
You could, but I still think it's going to choose the content that it thinks is most relevant for the page. So you're still, I think you still are throwing up a variable by doing it.
Right.
And most people, at least the clients that I deal with, they really don't like to have variables out there that, you know, that we can say, hey, this is something that we can't take account for, and it may be affecting us. They just don't like that. So we try to do, you know, our stuff as least subjective as possible, so that our results and our reporting are as accurate as can be.
Very good. Well, I appreciate that, and you know, I think just polling the looks amongst my panel members, there was a few people with lost looks in their eyes. but you had me at Dom, Jody. You had me at Dom.
There was one sentence out of there that I just have to make a blog post out of. It had more words in it that I'm lost.
It's a beautiful thing. Speaking of other factors of optimization that have kind of come to light, we mentioned a article here in our news segments that I wanted to pull back around to you. So let's kind of park the rendering discussion here, because it's very, very important. But what have you seen from HTTPS? It's growing more and more. What should SEOs keep in mind when migrating to HTTP? Well, let me first ask you your opinion of HTTPS to begin with.
I think it's a good thing. The web, you know, I actually open my presentation with, you know, if you were fortunate to live as long as I have, the very first experience you had with JavaScript after firing up your shiny brand new Microsoft Internet Explorer browser was to go into Options, Advanced Options, Security, and turn JavaScript off.
Because it was failing miserably?
Because it was the vehicle for so many viruses,
right,
but it really wasn't the problem. The problem was Internet Explorer. It's
the problem has always been Internet
the vehicle
Explorer,
with which all that stuff was injected, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I kind of look at HTTPS in that same light, right? We're moving to a much more secure web that's needed to be there for a long time. Right. The real fight has been with internal IT, right? Because they want to be able to see traffic. And if you're in HTTPS, even on your own local wire, they can't see it.
Nope.
It was the giant discussion on HTTP2 when we were moving to that, because there was a whole group that was like, no, we do not want HTTP2 unless it is entirely HTTPS. Mm-hmm. And the internal IT folk and that sort of stuff were like, no, we have to be able to see internal traffic. You can't do this. So I am a firm believer that a secure web is a better web. I think moving to HTTPS is absolutely the way to go. It's such little programmatic overhead and you know, to make it happen.
Right.
It does incur costs with secure certificates, but as the web gets more and more of this, those prices should drop.
Yeah.
So I am actually for it. I think the second part, as far as like being a rank factor, I think Google's one of those ones. I think they've kind of gotten in the habit of, they make the announcement, nothing happens. I mean, Mobilegeddon was kind of the same thing, right? Here's this big thing, and then they come out and say, well, all things being equal, this one factor could move you up a rank. I think what they do is they then give everybody like a year and a half, and then they're like, now we're going to start turning that dial up.
Right.
We've given everybody enough time. So I think in the beginning it was nothing, and I think over time it's going to become more and more of a rank factor, not for relevancy, but I think, you know, when you look at, you know, whether you should send somebody to a malware page and whatever that part of the algorithm is, I think that's going to be important there. but not necessarily for the other stuff you normally see that are rank factors.
I'd agree with you. You see this pattern of the announcements, and then they follow up over a few years to actually grade that. I mean, page speed was the same thing, is that it was a non-issue or a non-factor, and then ultimately, I mean, they revealed it was always a factor. They just weren't putting that much weight on it. So I agree with you, and the story of 30% of the rankers in SERPs from a Moz study are displaying HTTPS. That's not coincidental. There's certainly some things that are afoot here. So your advice is pay attention to Google. Don't run flying off a cliff whenever they actually announce a new factor. But wait patiently, get your stuff in order, and continue down the trail that they've already set up for you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think early adoption, I think, is always one of your biggest market advantages that you can have.
Sure.
Right? So try to get in there. But sometimes that early market adoption for HTTPS, it probably wasn't that big.
Yeah. No, it will be, though. And you're right.
It will be.
The price will come down. Tom, you had a question about AMP pages. Can you throw this at Jody?
Yeah, so when we were at SMX West earlier in the year, the AMP was kind of the new thing, and they made a big haboo, and they had people from Google come out and present about AMP. I mean, I can only imagine it's going to keep growing. Right now, it's kind of only for news industries. But do you see that how AMP's going to be used for all the other industries? I'm thinking like local plumbers. I mean, do you see them moving to AMP here?
I do see that. I think really what Google's trying to do with AMP is they're controlling the web framework, right? So they're telling you, they're giving you this little bit of a JavaScript framework that you can create pages out of, and they started with almost no functionality, and they're building more functionality. The more functionality that they start building into AMP, I think the more that they're going to open it up. Each one of those pieces, I think, is designed so that you can have more types of AMP articles out there. But in order to do that, you have to be able to have, like right now, you can only have Google Analytics as far as your only analytics package. They're working on the other ones, but it's not really going to work for everybody else until that stuff kind of comes around. So as you see that functionality of the framework increase and keep increasing, I think that you're going to see a direct relation to opening it up to other things.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're certainly advocates of speed, and when Google says get your stuff in order, and that was a heavy push, and I'm assuming at SMX Advanced it was also a heavy push out there. Could you give us some recon on that since we weren't out there? I'm very sorry we weren't. We wanted to see your presentation.
No issues. I'm trying to. I actually saw the AMP session, and I'm trying to recall. But I'm really horrible with names. Trying to recall the people who spoke about it, but really they gave pretty good technical understandings of how to understand what AMP HTML is, right? It was very much more along the technical lines of how you should be looking at it, how you should be using it, the different functionalities that you have that exist right now, because there's really not very much. You have the ability to put in image carousel, I think now.
Yep.
You can put in the ad blocks, but even dealing with that, it's still not totally easy. Even when you're dealing with the ad blocks, there's some technical things you have to do to make the blocks right that aren't necessarily intuitive. But yeah, I think as you see that functionality build out, I absolutely think that's going to be moving out. I think that they want to. They want to control that. And they have their own. They're willing to put their own CDN out there on the line to make it happen.
Which means that we have to optimize that as well. But on top of it, they completely stepped around conversion optimization on this. I mean, it was almost like the redheaded stepchild. He didn't even want to acknowledge that. I mean, these pages still need to convert. It was all about speed. It's all about cleaning the environment up, getting rid of all the extraneous formatting and external calls to different files. They're missing the point. Is that you still have to convert. You still have to have a conversion process on these AMP pages, and they just weren't even given that time of day. So that was an interesting, at least non-disclosure there.
Yeah, I don't know. Google tends to kind of tell you about half the story, and then you got to kind of figure out the other half yourself, which is fine. I mean, you shouldn't expect them to give it all to us. But yeah, the CTR piece. I mean, we work on that with our clients really hard. As a matter of fact, we helped one of our largest clients through the beta on that. I'm fairly certain I can state who that was, but I'm not exactly sure. And we saw some goofy results, by the way, with that. We had a top line publisher who, once they got into the news carousel, they dropped ranking.
Really?
Like, yeah, it was kind of a tough situation because like we were working directly with Google because they were a beta partner. And we worked directly with them, and it was difficult to kind of get that lined out at first. So there was some hiccups in the beginning, but I think now it's actually going really well.
Okay. So you'd recommend investigating and implementing AMP, even if they're not a news organization, if they're having good, fresh content coming through the site, embrace that technology. Yeah,
especially if you're on your blog post pages or anything where you're doing any type of press release or anything along those lines, because it's one of those things like if you set it up now.
Yep.
Once that as an early adopter, once they flip the switch, all that stuff just goes. I mean, we saw that with Rich Snippets when they very first started coming out. We had Career Builder and Online Shoes. We had their code already in place, and as soon as they came online, bam, they showed up in the SERPs.
Oh wow, very good.
And that was really good early adoption. They saw great results from that.
Very good. Well, we do want to leave some SEOs with some good information of what skills they should have. Can you ask us what skills separate technical SEOs from others? What resources can one use to learn some of the skills of a technical SEO?
So I always recommend for people to go to like Code Academy or one of those free places to get coding. If you can learn and understand the relationship between the HTML source, the CSS files, and the JavaScript, once you kind of get that component down, the DOM makes a whole lot of sense, and that you don't necessarily need to learn that because you kind of already learned with the conjunction of all three of those pieces. Once you can kind of learn how web pages work at a fundamental level, which takes some time, the next really big thing is you really do need to understand web servers as well as internet protocols, and nobody wants to learn internet protocols.
It's kind of like TCP.
Right? Has anybody on the line right here ever read an RFC?
Nope.
No, sir.
They will make your eyes bleed. They're wonderful documents. They're exactly what all of the internet is run off of. But I mean, if you really want to learn the internet and that sort of stuff, it's the fundamental sources that you probably want to go to.
Oh, excellent. All right.
Just for fun, my favorite RFC is email construction, email address construction. Because all the regex, all the regex and everything else, if you guys check it out, are BS. Literally, the regular expression to analyze an email address is like a meg long.
Are you serious?
It's absolutely insane. Yeah.
I spoke too soon. We have a RFC voyeur in the room.
Yeah. Hey, if you like that one, I recommend you look at the April Fool's ARPA-Walkie.
Nice.
That's actually an RFC.
I will check it out.
The ARPA-Walkie.
The ARPA-Walkie. Well, to finish up, Jody, I really appreciate your time. I want to ask you some personal questions. What bugs you about your industry right now?
I think kind of what bugs me, and this is I don't want to tear on specific people in the industry. That's not really what it's for. But I have two gripes actually. One is I think that through a lot of the marketing channels that we have, that a lot of the writers are contracted to write a certain amount of articles within a certain period of time. And it's literally filling the SEO blogosphere. I mean, it's looking more and more like an echo chamber because you just got to write articles, right? They're not good articles. They're just articles. Right. And so I think that's probably one of my biggest gripes is that SEO operates within this echo chamber, and we get the same articles. I mean, over and I mean, how many times have you guys read the top 5 ways to do keyword research?
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I'm serious. Like, and they still come out. How many times have you guys read SEO is dead?
Oh yeah.
I can think of at least a dozen.
I wrote one.
So that's definitely one of my biggest gripes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like the.
My second one is that we are an unknowledgeable industry. And so that allows for snake oil salesmen to enter into it. And so part of what I really want to do is help educate this technical side so that we can get rid of them. Web development had the snake oil salesman for probably about 10 years, where, hey, I could go get it done by my nephew down in his basement for $500. I'm going to get you all this stuff. I mean, people were promised all kinds of stuff, and because we were unknowledgeable about how websites worked back in the 1990s, a lot of people got fleeced. And I think the same thing still works with SEO. Because we have a lot of people who are not knowledgeable, it allows for the snake oil salesmen to come in and represent themselves as if they're part of the industry, and they're not.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think the industry is kind of self-writing in a way, is that there's more communication happening in the SEO industry than ever before, and what people were able to get away with and have a long list of contributor articles everywhere. I mean, that day's done. To a particular degree, and people are being found out earlier than later. At least that's my opinion.
I think there's another side to it too, though, and that's that
there's always another side. Doug.
Well, just like consumers drive prices down and everything, businesses do the same thing, and so they're out for the cheap fix, and so everybody's out there that's lying and saying they can do it for cheap. They come to the table, and so you waste this money, waste this money, and then by the time someone finally sees that, hey, we're getting our butt kicked, they go, well, we spent all of our budget on these crap guys, right. And so there's the education part. To me is the biggest, because that's, and then the other part is, it's our job as search engine optimization professionals to show the return on investment, to show the value to our clients. But that's
perfect. Absolutely,
but it's not going to be overnight. And that's the hard part, is getting them to understand, hey, stick with us a couple of years.
Yeah, no, I agree. So let me ask you, what does excite you about the industry now that we know what you don't like?
No, perfect. I think the thing that I really love is that we are seeming to be in a consolidation phase of computers, which I really love. Mm-hmm. When you think back computers way back when we had mainframe and a terminal, the mainframe did everything for you. The terminals really didn't have much computing power.
Right.
Well, now our mobile phones are kind of those terminals, right? When we're using the cloud for computation, we're using the cloud for service, and we're also bringing this parity between the mobile, tablet, and desktop into a single thing.
Yes.
And I really like that. I love the fact that we may be doing actually less SEO coming up in the near future because of this consolidation. And I love the pace with which technology is moving today. It is awesome.
It's a beautiful thing. So, I mean, is your view that we are going to be doing away with the individual devices, that they're going to kind of turn back into terminals, for lack of a better description, and your cloud experience will be moving to terminal? So everything that you're developing, all of your apps and all your tool sets, all your content and what have you, is moving with you as you're interacting with your phone, as you're going to your desktops, as you're going to even the train station. Yes, there are still trains.
Yeah,
but
and I'll even go a step further.
Yeah.
I can see a continuity of that assistance. Like when you park your car out in your driveway, right? Whatever you've been doing continuity-wise, music that you've been listening to, maybe you were in the middle of dictating an email or whatever, that immediately carries as soon as you open the door. Mm-hmm. Your house then takes over that same computational power, and there's a continuity between what you were just doing in your car, and now it's the exact same things happening in your house, and it's not device-specific.
It's life experience tracking, basically.
Yes.
Yes. My belief is that we won't have laptops and we won't have desktops in the future. That you'll just have your mobile phone, sit down, and the screen will open up, and you'll keep doing your work.
Yep.
You mean
I agree.
This right here, this
yeah, absolutely. You need to speak in the microphone if you want to be heard.
I was just saying, so I won't have this Asus lovely computer that I have now.
Is that some sort of dig?
You should use that as a doorstop now.
Whoa, nice.
Wow.
Thank you, Jody. I ask my boss every day for a Mac, and this is the discussion we have.
Absolutely.
I get it after a year of employment at Site Strategics, and poor Tom over there has been...
I'm still on an Asus.
What the heck is
I
this?
really want a Mac, though, but whatever.
Here's the deal. Here's why I'm a Mac guy. I'm not an ideologue. the Mac is a native development environment.
Right.
So if you want to learn how to code, shell code, script code with Perl or Ruby or whatever, this is native.
Yeah,
it's all built in. You don't have to go get anything extra. It's all right here. And I think if more SEOs were to explore the power of what they could come up with and create on their computer, I think it would really help the industry in the long sense. But I think everybody would benefit from it. I would switch to Microsoft tomorrow if I could be more productive.
There you go. More productive.
More
Max,
productive.
More productive. Got that?
Interesting. No, I agree completely. I just don't know if everybody's Mac-worthy.
If you're a mechanic, you don't go to Walmart to get your tools. You go get a Snap-on.
They have an entire tool section at Walmart.
I know they do. And you won't make any money with it.
Hey, well, Jody, tell us an amazing...
Look at that. He changes the subject.
Very quickly. I want to talk about Jody. Nobody else wants to talk about Jody. I want to talk about Jody. What's an amazing but true fact for you, Jody?
I think I said I don't consider myself an adrenaline junkie, but I really enjoy, after a hard day of kind of looking at ones and zeros and being in front of the screen, I definitely like to go out and mountain bike, rock climb, surfing. I was actually surfing 2 days ago.
Sweet. Very good. Well, is there anything that you want us to promote for you that's upcoming for you?
No, I'm going to be at SMX East on September 28th, I believe. I'd love for anybody listening to come down and let me know what you think.
Excellent. And they can always find you on your Twitter handle. And I've got to ask you the question here. What's up with GIMP Slice?
All right. So
there it is.
I was in basic training. I had a roommate who we used to joke around with all different kinds of, he was Puerto Rican, and we would go back and forth with all kinds of fun things back and forth. I'm not really going to get into on the radio because it's not necessarily appropriate. But Slice ended up becoming something, home slice, biscuit slice. Right. It just became like this ongoing joke. And then one day I had to go to sit call. I had a messed up foot, and so I became GIMP Slice.
There it is.
And then it just kind of stuck, and nobody ever uses it, so it's always easy to get on any account I open anything up.
There's not a lot of squatters on GIMP Slice.
Yeah, not a lot. That's a pretty open domain.
All right. Well, Jody, I also have to just bring up one final thought here is you represent a small group of individuals that I also happen to be a member of, and that's the men with names that could be construed as girls' names. My name is Erin as opposed to Aaron, and I just want to give a shout out and hold up the flag and say, you know what? It's okay.
It is. Just so you know, when I joined McDonald's, my very first job, I was a counter boy.
Yep.
And back in the day when guys did not work on the counter.
Ah.
Yeah. Lots of rejection letters that started, "Dear Ms. O'Donnell."
I get them to this day, not rejection letters, but my wife is opening up my mail because it's Miss Erin Sparks, and nobody, even that app, the Crystal knows. Crystal knows.
She knows.
She knows I'm a she, evidently.
Well. It is fun to be saddled with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, my favorite song's A Boy Named Sue, so I'll just keep going on.
Wow.
Here's to androgynous names.
That's right.
That was metrosexual before there was metrosexual, all right? We're gonna edit that one out of the podcast. All right, hey Jody,
what we want.
Thanks so much for your time today, and we'll certainly get this information out and promote you as you come up to SMX East, and hopefully we can see you out there. And we'll be watching from afar, and certainly champion out on the intertubes out there. Again, thank you so much for your time, and let us know if we can be of any assistance to you. It's great talking technical SEO with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity. This was a lot of fun.